that I've attached for attitude poses to try to point out some areas that I think are really important. So first of all, the definition of an attitude pose is a pose that demonstrates your character's personality, and it's something that would be used repeatedly. It would just really express the different, well, basic, just attitudes of your character and how they would. So when doing these attitude poses, so here's some examples that were given by the author, Eric Goldberg. And so there's, of course, the line of action, which we've spoken about before, but this is the first time you're going to be using it. And so you've got these lines of action that are running through, and that line of action is just a guide to help you exaggerate your character, to really express through body language what they're feeling. And then he points out under here these silhouettes are just by the silhouette alone, without any of the features of the face. So a lot of times you will rely on the expressions within the face to show the emotion, and you think that's enough, but in animation it really isn't. You have to look at the whole body and the pose to express that emotion. And so in here, read through about different ways of using attitude poses, and it gives some examples, which I'm going to try to include a few pieces that you can look at. And so here he's showing different poses in a sequence, and so these are those attitude poses, and we also call them action poses. So he's expressing here what the character is thinking in each of those. So read through those and notice the entire body is being used. So these are some action poses or attitude poses during walks or runs. And you've got mischief, angry, stealth, trepidation, sycophantic. Wow. Okay, new word for me. And then here we have an action pose of this hipster wolf. And he's flipping a coin, smoking a cigarette. He's got his shoulders up like he doesn't care. And then the peeved pig, who's all upset about something, and notice even the action of like his paws, I guess, hooves, and ears and his eyes, and so he's just a little upset at somebody, and he has to wait. So you're going to start doing some attitude poses of your character, and read through a lot of this. Look at for different artists' uses of these types of emotions in their characters, and I'm going to again attach some videos for you to read through. And then on this getting started, convincing the audience that your character exists. Remember that one of the 12 principles of animation, is believability, but also appeal, having people believe that your character exists, and then also liking them, even if they're the bad guy. So this is what we're working towards by getting these attitude poses made. So how do you develop a character to convince people that they really exist? Well, this is part of it. Coming up with attitude poses that says, this is how my character feels in different circumstances, and so we believe that they really exist because they're able to express those different depths of emotions. So ask yourself some of these questions, read over those for your character, really start to analyze who your character is. And we can see here it's the same character, but the character's old, the character's gone on an Alaskan cruise and gained some weight. And then they went to Venice Beach and started working out to get fit, and then they're really weak and sick. So what would your character look like if all those things had happened to them? And then this is a great example of attitude poses and how they vary. So here by the faces, we can see what their emotions are, but notice how everybody's tall and stiff, whereas here leaning in, so you can imagine the line of action here, and then sticking out the chest like, oh, you don't bother me, lady, or intimidate me, and then the girl hiding behind and having that line of action away from the mean lady, being scared and relying on the man to protect her. That's a much more believable and interesting scene than the first one. So we're going towards that in our animation. So read through this as well, and some different characters and points that the author's making. And then this is a really great example of using the reaction to different performances, um, different attitude poses on the same action. We're going to go through the X sheet, so don't worry so much about that, but the reading here, establishing rhythm as you start different actions, you will be going in towards that. Again, believability versus realism. You know, if we're going for realism, it sometimes isn't exaggerated enough, so you really want to think about the weight and the volume as you're expressing those different attitudes, not changing those so that they don't seem believable. And pantomime, learning how to make people act with their bodies to make it to express what's happening. That's really just like a pantomime artist. They don't speak. And then here we have some more examples. So flip through and just read quickly through this. And then how do you make a character sincere? Giving them a goal or a want. We're going to get into that next after we finish our action poses and then our tweenings, our in-betweens and key poses. We're going to start going into storylines and then showing a range of emotions that we're going to do in this segment. So I will be adding a lot of these movies that he's talking about in the text, a lot of these that are listed. And then finally, there's that line of action again. So this is a different book, and it is by Preston Blair, character animation, cartooning animation. So notice, like, this doesn't seem too believable because he's far away, the line of action, he's just kind of throwing his fist out there, and yeah, his head's bent back, but that's not really the way the body would be. So the line of action, notice the line of force, really, that line striking through the head going forward and then him getting crushed and bent back. And then these as well, like he's going to swing. It doesn't really look right when he's kind of throwing it over his head, yeah, but his body wouldn't be forward as he's doing that. So arching backwards and then getting that full swing down, whereas the feet popped up, but the bent back down, now it would be arched forward. So working on some of those, get that line of action first as you try to do these attitude poses. And I'm sorry, this would not bend. I couldn't get it to rotate. Study some of these as well. What looks believable? Yes, if they're sad and still, or then there's going to be a straight line. But if they're moving, then the line of action is going to change drastically. Okay?